Welcome back to Catching Up to Fi. I am Jackie Cummings Koski, and today I have a special Wednesday episode for you. I actually joined our friend Andy Panko on his podcast, which is called Retirement Planning Education. He also has a YouTube channel and a very popular Facebook group. But we got into a lot of different topics, including financial independence, retire early. He didn't know a whole lot about the movement, so I talk about that, but also my FIRE journey. So I hope that you enjoy this episode, and remember that it is never too late to start. It's better late than never, and it's always the right time to catch up to FI. Take a listen.
Welcome to Catching Up to Fi, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. Thank you as always for listening. And this week watching, we have a very interesting real person chat. Today, I'm joined by Jackie Cummings Koski. Hello, Jackie.
Hey, Andy. I'm so glad to be on here. I think this is the first time we've ever chatted one-on-one, so I'm honored.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Jackie and I know each other through the virtual world and have for probably, it's October, over 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
Jackie was one of the earlier members of the Facebook group, Retirement Planning Education, which was Taxes and Retirement at the time. Very active participant. And I first really sort of noticed you made a comment about HSAs, health savings accounts. And it was the most elaborate, well thought out, thorough, like what? Who is this person that knows all this stuff about HSAs? Something I don't even know. Not that I'm the end all be all, but wow, this is some really in-depth stuff about HSAs. So I started paying attention and realized quickly, I don't know what your deal is, but you're sharp. And so we'll get into what your deal is now. And this is our first time recording this video, this audio, ever actually meeting each other face to face outside of Facebook. So thank you for doing this. I'm glad you're here, and it's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, of course. This will be fun.
Yeah. So as you all will hear, Jackie isn't the typical real person. I mean, she did retire from normal sort of corporate life, but has taken on a truly impressive, inspiring sort of life 2.0, which we'll get into. Active contributor to financial education, big in the financial independence, retire early, or FIRE, or FIRE, which is kind of sort of the subtopic of this episode, let's call it, and we'll get into that. So really looking forward to it. But before we do, I have a question for you, Jackie.
Okay.
What happens when a microscope runs into a telescope?
Oh, gosh. I have no idea, but hit me with it.
They kaleidoscope.
Oh, God.
You got it? Yeah. All right. Everyone, I promise it all gets better from here. So, okay, so I'm going to go a little off script. Jackie and I sort of discussed this, and we're both curious to see where this is going to go. This is very, again, non-traditional for these real person things. But let's start with some basic background. In what state are you, and how old are you?
I am in the state of Ohio, and I am 55 years old.
All right. What is your retirement status? And this is a can of worms that's just going to blow the show up right here. But what's your retirement status or work status?
My retirement and work status. So I retired from my corporate job in December 2019 after working for a global data company for 21 years. So I retired just a few months before COVID hit, and I thought, oh my God, I retired at the exact wrong time. And then I changed my mind about 3 months later when the market came back. So that's the corporate job. Now, what did I decide to do after my corporate job? I ended up going back to school. I found an amazing program at Kansas State University that was for financial therapy, which I found absolutely fascinating. So, after I retired, I'm like, what do I really want to do? What do I love? And financial education and things like that was at the center of all of that. So this program for financial therapy was something I decided to do. It was a master's degree. And part of that master's program was these pesky 6 classes for financial planning. And so I took them begrudgingly, but I learned a lot. And the main thing that I learned is that those are the 6 classes that are required in order to sit for the CFP exam. Now, that was off the shelf for me at that time, and I was really going for this financial therapy degree. So I did that, and then there was several other things I ended up doing. As you know, now I co-host a podcast. I wrote a book called Fire for Dummies. These things were not on the list when I retired. So it's amazing how quickly things change. But because I was retired, I was able to say yes to a lot of these things. Now, they don't all pay the bills at all. Like, you don't get a ton of, you don't get hardly anything from podcasting. You don't get much from writing a book. So these things aren't making me rich, and I still withdraw from my portfolio. So that's kind of what my retirement looks like. I'm not ready to say I'm unretired, because again, these projects are not enough to pay the bills, but I'm thrilled that I get to do the things that really light me up, the things that I enjoy. So I believe that, you know, doing the work that you love does not always have to be through a job. And I'm just experiencing that right now.
Great. So much to unpack there, but maybe let's step back before sort of life slash, career 2.0. You were in a corporate job, wasn't financial advising, wasn't financial planning related. Retired. You weren't even 50 yet when you stopped in 2019, right? If I did the math.
No, I was 49, and I retired December 2019.
And so just going back, and I guess we can sort of tie this into the financial independence, retire early. What stage in your life, in your corporate life, in your personal life, did you realize you wanted to, or thought you could, retire, and we'll just call it retire for now. I mean, that's a lot of different meanings, but retire in your late 40s from the corporate thing that most people would assume they have to work to until they're, mid 60s or whatever. So how'd that start? How'd you get educated? How'd you know you were at that point, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I assumed the same thing for a very long time. And I had gotten very interested in personal finance. I guess one of my big wake-up calls when it comes to money was when I got divorced. So I got divorced around 2003, 2004, after being married for about 12 years. And the big red flag for me was when we looked at the retirement accounts, there was a huge discrepancy. So I had $20,000 in my retirement account, my 401k. At this time, I'm in my mid-30s, and my spouse, he was around the same age. We had similar jobs. Maybe he was making a tiny bit more than me, but he had $120,000 in his retirement account. So this just blew my mind, Andy, because I'm like, how does that happen? So, we all know, how devastating it is to go through a divorce, and, all the anxiety and the stress and the ups and downs. But on top of that, I've got this reminder that I was financially ignorant, and it wasn't my husband's fault, right? I mean, we just didn't talk about these things. Now, things were equalized after the divorce, but I vowed to myself that I never wanted to feel this financially ignorant again. So I started just basic financial literacy, basic, learning about my money and knowing how to invest. He was invested in different things. Hindsight, I looked back and I realized the main difference was like what we were invested in. And of course, that gap continues to grow. So I ended up joining an investment club. It's supported by a nonprofit organization called Better Investing. And that's probably not the first way to get your finances together, but it all comes full circle. So as I'm learning about investing, and more than anything, just not being fearful about it anymore, I'm backtracking. I'm like, why am I not maxing out my 401k, my Roth IRA, my health savings account? What are my expenses? So as I'm figuring things out myself, my way of learning, my favorite way of learning is podcasts. We're chatting on a podcast today. So there was a few financial podcasts at the time. I mean, people like Clark Howard, Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm sort of doing the same search, and I start to see financial independence podcast, retire early podcast. I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. So as I'm digging into this financial independence, retire early, I'm like, how can these people retire early? I don't believe them. I'm like the world's biggest skeptic. So as I started listening and learning, I really loved the people that were sharing their numbers. That was extremely helpful. Even though my situation was different, I was a Black single mom. A lot of these guys in early FIRE movement were guys that looked like you. They were young, white engineers, they knew it all right out of college. I'm, basically 30, in my mid 30s when I'm figuring this stuff out. So I finally took what I was learning about how these other people were retiring early. Even though my situation wasn't just like them, I adjusted for it based on my situation. And I'm doing the math 20 different ways. And it seems like every stumbling block or everything that I thought would keep me from retiring before this 65 or whatever, I found a way around it. Like, what are you going to do about health insurance? Found a solution for that. What am I going to do about getting money out early of my retirement accounts or money to live on before I turn 59 and a half? Figured that out. So all of these things, once I dug into them, there was a solution. So, this, kind of reminded me that every problem has a solution if you're willing to work hard enough or do enough digging to figure this out. And I've got this crazy curiosity, and it was kind of fun to figure this stuff out. So when I came to the conclusion that I did not have to wait until I was 65 to retire, I started thinking more about what would I even want to do if I retired early. And that's what headed me into that direction, and I guess helped me to realize that I didn't have to wait until I was in my 60s to actually retire from this corporate job.
Yeah. Now, how did you, I know you have a daughter, and we were talking offline before this. She is 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
As we speak. So congrats on soon to be, first time grandparent.
Thank you.
I don't know how old she was at the time during the divorce, during your learning process of money and starting to explore this FIRE thing. But how did you make that work? Single mom with your daughter, however old she was. I guess this goes back to I'll admit, I'm ignorant. I don't know anything about FIRE. I know enough to know I have biased opinions about it. To me, what I think FIRE is, and I know it's wrong, it's people scrimping and saving everything they can, basically sacrificing life and enjoyment until they're 40, 45, so they can tap out of the working world and then live sort of modestly / frugally on the money they saved and never work again for the next 50 years. I know that's so wrong, but just how did it relate to you being, again, single mom, still working, daughter, et cetera, with doing what you need to do to hit whatever your target was?
Yeah, that's a very common misconception, and probably because, in the media, they love to write about or cover the anomalies and the people that are the most extreme. So are there people in the FIRE community that scrimp and save? Well, there's people everywhere in every community that does that, right? Even people that are retiring traditionally. But that is not the case. And actually the early days, I feel like a lot more of that may have existed in the early days. And there's a lot that has changed, more language around enjoy the journey, make sure you are, not putting everything on hold till you get, old and gray, or not having any fun until you make it to this early retirement. So I certainly did not do that. And that would have turned me off quite a bit. So had I not done my own research and looked into a little bit more, I probably would have been turned off and not interested in it at all. But because I was willing to do a little bit of my own research and apply the things that I thought were doable for me, it allowed me to kind of pursue it. So for me, I was making a modest salary, roughly about $80,000 a year. So I wasn't making a really high salary. So I learned early on that I needed to do more with the money that I had because I wasn't interested in climbing the corporate ladder. Thought something was wrong with me for a long time, but I wasn't interested in that. And I'm trying to be a mom. At the time of my divorce, my daughter was 9 years old. So I spent a good chunk of my FIRE journey. I was doing this while I was, a single mom. And for me, I never got to the point where I felt like I had to scrimp and save and really sacrifice. Now, I was raised by a single dad with 6 kids, and I did grow up in poverty. So perhaps that gave me some skills or some mindset that always made me mindful of the money that I spent, right?
Okay.
So for me, I was a better saver and investor than I was a budgeter. But I had to figure out my expenses. And the way that I did that is I just took whatever my regular salary was, which was about $80,000. I deducted what I was contributing to my retirement accounts, what I was contributing to my HSA, and then what I was paying in taxes. Whatever was left, that was my expenses. And, I feel like that's a conservative way to do it, right? I probably didn't spend everything that was left, but let's assume that I did. And so I didn't change anything as far as how I spend, but it did help me be more conscientious about what I was spending. It helped me come up with a savings rate. So I did have some little luxuries in my life that I enjoyed, and so did my daughter. Like, for instance, I drive a luxury car. I do it a smart way. I buy it 3 to 5 years old. I pay cash for it, and I keep them for a long time. So this whole thing about, budget every single penny, don't do anything, don't go anywhere, that just was not me. And most of the people I know in the FIRE community, they don't live like that. They're just very conscientious about how they spend their money, which to me is a smart thing for everyone to do.
Right, agreed. And that's good to know, because you just sort of confirmed I'm wrong in my understanding. And I guess I am envisioning the extreme cases of FI, financial independence, retire early, of that, just like sacrifice everything for 10 years, 15 years until your 40s and then quit. But it sounds like that's very much not the norm. That's probably the exception.
Right.
So let's define, you literally wrote the book on FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. It is part of the For Dummies series. You're the FIRE for Dummies author. So awesome, congrats, and we'll be sure to link to that. If you were to explain to just the average person, what is FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you? What should it mean to others when they hear that term?
Yeah, well, the first thing I always do is define what it stands for, because there's literally people that don't know what it stands for. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early.
Okay.
And it basically means that you have grown your nest egg large enough where you can live off of the income from that nest egg and not depend on a job for your paycheck. And the more you save, the faster it grows. And that means the fewer years you have to work. Mr. Money Mustache, wrote this famous article called The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement. And it was a simple chart. If you have this savings rate, you retire this early. And I think at a 50% savings rate, you can retire in about 17 years. Okay, so much shorter period than the normal 30 or 40 years that we typically work as Americans and that we're told. So I want to also sort of define the FIRE movement, because it's a much bigger concept. The FIRE movement is about reaching a point where you can actually do more of what you love without worrying about a paycheck. It's a powerful place to be in when you're not depending on someone else to pay you in order to survive. And so it's something that I think most people never get to think about. We are told by, Social Security or employer, all kinds of other, societal things that says retirement age in America is 65. And we all take that at face value. But we had some things to happen in the last few decades. Pensions are gone. So those golden handcuffs are not there anymore. Corporate America basically said, and I work for Corporate America, so that's what I use as my analogy. But Corporate America basically says that, oh, we're not going to do that pension anymore, but we'll give you a match on your 401k, but you got to figure out your own investments when you can retire, and it's all on you. We don't want to give you any advice. We don't want to help you with anything because we don't want to get in trouble. Okay, there's a handful of people in the FIRE movement that basically said, okay, that's fine. We think we can figure it out ourselves. And guess what? We don't think it should take 30 years. We think maybe it should take a lot less time, especially since I'm having to manage my own investments and figure out how much to save. Now I have the freedom to do that and to release myself from being, part of a 9 to 5. You define my metrics, you define my hours and all of that. Now I can be released from all of that and do more of the way I think it should be done and just give me more freedom.
And another probably misconception I have or misunderstanding is that the retire early, or the RE in FIRE, means you stop any sort of work-related, employment-related income. Now, I guess different people have different interpretations or usages of this, but is that accurate, or is it okay to do something as long as it's something you want to do, something optional? It may not be making the same amount you did before, but it's where you're doing it because you want to do it and it happens to pay something.
Yeah, let me just say that some people do think in absolutes, okay? I feel like the term retirement has a completely different definition than it did 50 years ago.
Yeah.
In my opinion and the way that I look at it, retirement just means I'm no longer bound to a job. And I can say yes to the things I want to do, no to the things I don't want to do, and I don't necessarily need anyone's permission. So that means that once I'm done with a corporate job, it doesn't mean that I stop doing anything to contribute to society. It doesn't mean that I stop doing the things that I love. If you believe that the only way you can be a productive individual and contributor to society is through a job, then there's probably a lot more thinking you can do to expand your mind and say, okay, how can I do the things that I love, but not be bound to the job? And that's the choice that you give yourself. So I get asked that all the time, are you still retired? I see you doing all these things. Well, I don't consider myself unretired, but frankly, I don't have to define it for anyone. I don't want to have to go through a checklist to tell you why I'm not retired. Yeah. You can define it however you want to. But, one of the early sections in the book was the psychology behind retiring early. And it kind of talks about these things, but the main thing is to use your own measuring stick. Like you, Andy Panko, might say, well, Jackie, you are working. Writing a book is work. Doing a podcast is work. And by your measuring stick, okay, I'm not retired. That's fine. But, you don't pay my bills and you don't, dictate kind of what my life is like. Now, if you ask me, I am still retired. Those things don't really make that much money. I'm still, if I wanted to not work anymore and if I wanted to work again and I wanted to be unretired, I could easily do that. Like you mentioned, so I have my CFP, I went back to school, I have a master's degree in financial planning and financial therapy. I could go back and easily get a job for making over $100,000 a year. No problem. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So I consider myself retired because I just choose to do the things that I love. And only after I retired from my corporate job was I able to say yes to some of these things and I guess create the bandwidth to be able to do them. Like writing the book. I'm so glad that I got to write this book, but I can tell you for sure, if I was working, there's no way. I just would not have the bandwidth to do it. It would just stress me out like crazy to even consider it. And now to be released from that type of stress and that type of anxiety around just more work and just working myself in a frenzy, I got to approach it a different way, and I got to enjoy actually writing. I actually love writing, but if I had to write while I was working, that was stressful to me.
Right. Probably burn out quickly from that, right?
Yeah.
I like I've come around to, I like what you said, define retirement however you want to define it, use your own measuring stick, yardstick, whatever terminology you use. I think that's it. Everyone's version of retirement is going to be different. I've since come around to subscribe to the thought that retirement is freedom. When you have freedom of choice, freedom of time, call it work optional, some derivation of that, you're not bound to having to do the typical 40, 50-hour a week thing for the steady, whatever, steady Eddie paycheck, because you need the money, because you don't have any choices or options otherwise. When you're able to leave that, whether it's not have any sort of income producing employment at all, or it is, but stuff you enjoy, stuff on your terms, stuff part-time, stuff that pays a fraction of what you used to get, I view that as retirement. So like, I consider you retired. Again, I'm not the one who owns your definition of retirement, but like I'm very much aligned with that view of retirement. If you want to work, fine, work, but you're doing it because you want to, not because you have to, type thing.
Well, your stamp of approval means a lot to me.
Yeah, but no, tell me just to pipe down, because I don't ever want to sound like I'm defining or owning the classification of what someone is, or
No, but many others do. Many others will profess, why on earth would you stop working? You're not contributing to society. And so those become very short-sighted opinions. And, people just like the attention, where they can, generally it's going to be on social media somewhere that way they can just like spout out and, everybody's got an opinion and everybody's entitled to it. It's just a lot of times very different than mine.
Right. A few other quick technical questions about, or I guess definitional aspects of FIRE that I'm curious about personally, and then we'll get into some more about some of how you're making your FIRE journey work and some of the kind of housekeeping things of, like you mentioned, health insurance and accessing your assets before typical retirement age type thing. But what is the term COST-FI, or Coast Financial Independence? What does that mean?
Yeah, COST-FI is probably gotten very, very popular. When I first reached FIRE or learned about the FIRE movement, these other flavors of FI didn't even exist. But I think a lot of people was thinking about FIRE, that it was very restrictive and things like that. And thus they came up with these other different types of FI that you can do. COST-FI basically means that you have enough in your nest egg, typically a retirement account, that if you never contributed another penny, it will grow enough to cover what you need in retirement. So for instance, if you were working a job and now you have, let's say, $900,000 in that account, maybe you work 15 or 20 years, okay? So if you never contribute another penny in about 8 years, that same account will be $1.8 million, and that might be your FIRE number. So you don't really need to contribute anymore, meaning that you could take a different job that doesn't pay as much. You can take a break from working and just do projects or whatever to live off of. So you're basically coasting your way in because you don't have to actively be putting money into your nest egg.
Got it. Makes sense. Now, how about fat FIRE? I've seen that one thrown around as well. What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't, for me, if I had to label myself these days, I don't know if I would say fat FIRE. Some people might, but fat FIRE is generally you have big expenses. Typically, you got a big income and you need a lot to live off of, and you have a bigger number. So these could be people like doctors with a high income, maybe business owners with a high income. And when I say high income, let's see, the average household income in America is around $70,000. So maybe twice that much, or even 3 times. So they realize that they live a fat life. Like for my podcast, my co-host is an ER physician, Bill Yan. So him and his wife have a pretty big life, a nice big life, probably bigger than mine. And so they have a bigger number. So he wants to wait a little bit longer because he wants the fat FIRE lifestyle, which is totally fine. They're acknowledging that I enjoy some of these luxuries. Maybe instead of the $5,000 vacation, they go on the $20,000 vacation. Maybe they have a much nicer house instead of a $400,000 house, they got the $2 million house. So just things like that. They're acknowledging that they live a bigger lifestyle, but typically they're going to have the income and the nest egg to support it.
Got it. So FIRE just on a larger scale, larger number, dollar amounts, basically, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Those are the only two, again, I'm not active at all in following the FIRE community, but those are the only two sort of like offshoots or other labels of FIRE I've come across. Is there anything else, any other labels or subcategories of FIRE you think are worth bringing up to listeners?
Yeah, you have the Barista Fi, which comes from taking a job just to like get health insurance, like at Starbucks. That's
Okay.
Barista Fi. There's also something we call late starter Fi, and typically that would almost be somebody like me, but someone that just didn't know a lot of this financial stuff, and they're either getting started late or they're restarting. And so things look a little bit different because maybe you don't have all that time for compound growth, but there's some other additional superpowers you might have when you're in your, 40s and 50s that maybe you didn't have at age 25. So late starter Fi has a slightly different approach as well, but you still may have the goal of retiring early. Like for me, I started late. 38 was probably the time I really woke up and started doing some things different. And in about 10 years, I got to my FI number. So it's not this 30 or 40 year horizon that we hear a lot about. Because normally if you're 40 or 50, you've saved a little something.
Yeah.
You've paid a lot into Social Security. You're at your peak earning years possibly. So that's a slightly different approach. So all of these have slightly different approaches to reaching your retirement age or the ability to retire. If you officially don't want to retire, that's totally fine. But creating the option to retire early, they all just have a slightly different approach. But still, the goal is to not wait until they're 60, 65, or whatever the normal retirement age is.
Sure. And you sort of mentioned your number. Now, I know before we hit record, we talked about this, and I would never ask people for their numbers, if nothing else for security and privacy reasons, but you brought it up. You said your number's already out there because you're so active and vocal in the community. So with that said, I don't want to be the show where you first expose all this to the world, but if it's already out there, I think if you're okay sharing, this would be a great data point just for listeners to even have like a starting figure of what does FI look like for someone. Now, granted, other people will be much smaller numbers, other people will be much larger numbers, but what's your FI numbers, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, you should take advantage of that clickbait headline. Jackie exposes all her numbers.
Right, yeah.
No, I have shared it before, and I just remember when I was in the early part of my journey and figuring this stuff out, it was so helpful to me, those people that shared their actual numbers. And so I said, if I ever have the opportunity to do so, I will, if only as a teaching tool or a reference point for other people. So you're right, everybody's will be a little bit different, but let me just frame up what my numbers look like. So like I said, I made about $80,000 a year. The way that I even figured that out is that I went to my Social Security statement, just at ssa.gov, and I looked at the last 10 years before I retire. And I took the average of that. Now, part of the work that I did, it was a small it's about 20 to 30% of commission. The rest was base compensation. So it varied from year to year. So I took the average of 10 years and it was $80,000. And this was back in, 2019. So your FI number, financial independence number, is simply 25 times your annual expenses. Now, when I did the math, I backed into, and that is a version of the 4% rule. So if so the 25 times expenses, it assumes a 4% withdrawal rate. Now, these numbers are not absolute, but you need to have some kind of starting point, okay? So that's our base case, right? So for me, my expenses was between $40,000 to $45,000 a year. So let's just say 40, comfortably $40,000 a year. And I'll just take a quick detour with that. So most people will say, wow, only $40,000 a year. I even had a friend of mine to say, I have 2 little kids. I spend that much in daycare.
Right. Yeah.
So, but for me, my child was a teenager becoming an adult. And a big difference in why my expenses were so low, besides the low cost of living area, I live in Ohio, and I really consider that a middle cost of living area. But things like I had very little debt. You know, so many people, a lot of their expenses is servicing debt. So I didn't have any student loans. I didn't have a car payment. I had a very low mortgage, which was about $1,200 a month, still is. I didn't pay off my house when I retired. We can talk about that later. But so I think the fact that I had very little debt made it possible for me to comfortably live off of $40,000 a year. So you take that $40,000 in annual expenses, that's what I expected to spend in retirement as well. So 40,000 times 25 is
million.
Yay! Yeah, you go, man. No, you're a smart guy. So it's easily $1 million. Okay. However, so that was my number. So I reached that number, and where was this located? So primarily in my 401k. For most Americans, the way that they start saving is through their employee retirement plan. So that's where most of my money was. I was also maxing out my Roth IRA. You know, once I woke up, and I was also, and I never made more than the IRS income limit, so I could always contribute directly. And then I was putting, as you mentioned, a lot of money in my health savings account. So I was doing that. I was putting a little bit in brokerage account, a little bit in my investment club. So I was my savings rate was about a 40% savings rate when I did the math, and savings rate is just what percentage of your income are you saving. And then, so my expenses were 40,000. So 40,000 times 25 is $1 million. That was my number. I reached that number when I was 47, and that would have been 2017. Now, I still was not ready to leave my job. So I'd reached financial independence, but, you know, I grew up in poverty. So what was in my head was that I never want to be in poverty again. So I wanted to make sure I had enough cushion where if nothing worked out and everything went wrong, that I would still be okay. Like, I assumed zero income, and I didn't even include Social Security. So the $1 million was what it would take me to live off of. So I worked 2 more years to sort of think more about what did I want to do after I retired. And that's when I started thinking about, okay, I love financial education. I would really like to be able to do more of that. I decided to, you know, pursue this amazing financial therapy program, which meant that I was spending even more money. So once I retired, I had gotten to $1.3 million, and I reached that in 2019, right before I retired.
Okay. Excellent. So now a lot of technical questions, like how did you actually access it? So maybe we'll get into some of those now. Okay. And I definitely want to circle back toward the end and be sure we talk more about how you got involved with the Catching Up to FI podcast, how you came across starting the book and doing the book, and et cetera. Before we move on to the technical things, anything I'm missing or anything else you want to bring up about FI in general, your FI path, et cetera?
I mean, that pretty much covers it. I think the big pieces is that the 2 main questions I get all the time, and the 2 main questions I ask myself is, how do you access your money before you turn 59 and a half, and the health insurance part. Though no matter how many times I talk about it, the FIRE community talk about it, you talk about it, people still ask those same 2 questions. It baffles people.
Okay, so let's roll right into that then. So you're not yet 65, you're not eligible for Medicare, you retired before even being 50. So what did you do and what are you doing for healthcare? And I guess your daughter at the time, was she under 26 when you stopped working, or no?
She was under 26. Now, I am divorced, so she has a dad too that, okay, you know, so I made her get on her dad's insurance.
Got it. Okay.
She was like 23 or something like that. So she was an adult. So certainly she could have had her own insurance, but you know, to have kids on your insurance plan, it's dirt cheap. And I knew she couldn't get it cheaper than what she could get being on either my plan or her dad's plan. So I didn't have to worry about her, except to say, you're going to have to do something else. And it was an easy switch, you know, it wasn't a big deal. So, so the health insurance was a big, in the US, health insurance is a very big deal. Yeah. Now, I investigated several options. So I was, going to a university. There's dirt cheap health insurance through universities. So I looked at that. You have
as a student in the master's program, you mean you had access to? Okay, interesting.
as a student. Well, you normally would, but when I was looking at the fine print, they said you have to be a student that is on campus. So because I was doing a virtual program, so I had to eliminate that. I was looking at COBRA, which some people say is expensive, and the part you have to pay does get more expensive, but essentially you just don't get the employer subsidy anymore. So so that was expensive coming out of my pocket. So the other one, I looked at the health share ministries. A lot of them are religious based. That wasn't for me. I didn't feel comfortable. They weren't really health insurance, but some people will use them for their healthcare planning. So I looked at a lot of different options. The one I ended up going with was the Affordable Care Act, the ACA exchange. Now, I didn't realize, but you can go on and you can actually look at plans without even signing up. So I made sure I did that because it's very state specific and to an extent county specific. So I was in, your Facebook group a lot, and that topic would come up a lot about the ACA. So it took me a while, Andy, to realize that a lot of the comments seem to be politically motivated. So if you liked Obama, you liked Obamacare, which is the casual name for that. All right. And if you hated Obama, then you hated Obamacare. Well, it's the Affordable Care Act. Okay. It just happens to go into place and was something that was done during that administration. Nonetheless, I wanted to make sure I did some independent research because what I was getting was mixed reviews and I didn't know why. So when I finally did it for my state, the state of Ohio, and my zip code, they had a lot of different plans and a lot of different providers. When I say a lot, there was probably 6 different health insurance providers. Each of them had 4 or 5 plans. So I had plenty of things to choose from. Okay. And once I was done with corporate America, I can engineer my income a lot easier. Like, when you're a W-2 employee, there's nothing you could do with that W-2 at the end of the year, right? But for me, technically, I was a solopreneur, any money that I made would technically be self-employed, but I could use my expenses and deduct that from any income that I had. So my income looked a lot less, my taxable income looked a lot less than what I was actually living off of. So the Affordable Care Act is based on your modified adjusted gross income. So the lower that is, the more of a subsidy you may qualify for. So I made sure I understood how all of this worked. I did my research. Again, I'm a nerd like that. But so I was able to get nearly all of my health insurance premiums covered, and this was a silver plan. Silver plan is kind of falls in the middle. It wasn't a high deductible plan like I loved, so I no longer had an HSA. I've never had an HSA since I retired in 2019 because I could get a nice silver plan that was a $500 deductible, $1,500 max out of pocket. I think the premiums was somewhere around $700, and I got a subsidy that covered all of that. So for me, it's been 6 tax years that I've had the Affordable Care Act. I've been happy with it. Anthem is my provider, so a lot of the health insurance companies, those are health insurance companies that serve the private sector as well. Yeah. So that's what I've been on for all 6 years.
Okay, and still are. And the plan as of now, I guess, is just to keep that through turning 65 eventually.
Yeah, one little mention is, with the, so this year, the additional subsidies or the enhanced subsidies that were put into place, they are expiring. Some people think that the subsidies are expiring altogether. That's not the case. Right. So I was on the Affordable Care Act before these enhanced subsidies even went into place. So I know about what that looked like. Now, of course, with inflation, the premiums probably will go up, but the subsidies are still there like they were before these enhancements went into place a few years ago. So I fully expect to continue to do that. Now, there's one little change with the, the tax law that passed in July, and that it got signed into law in July. And it was basically, if you have a bronze plan on the ACA, you can have an HSA. Well, the reason why I didn't have a bronze plan before is because most of them didn't even qualify to contribute to an HSA. So it was ridiculous. So now, I think when I counted, there was like 30 different plans that were bronze, and only 4 of them qualified to contribute to an HSA. So it was really messed up. So I'm glad that they've changed that. So perhaps I may decide to get a bronze plan versus a silver plan. I don't know, but my plan is to continue with the Affordable Care Act, and not to mention, the pre-existing condition provision, is no longer an issue. So it's worked well for me. Again, I'm in the state of Ohio. I put in my zip code. Everyone will need to do their own research.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you hit on the options available pretty well. There's not a lot, frankly. Like when you lose employer-sponsored coverage, the options are basically, if your spouse has employer-sponsored coverage, if you're married, get on theirs. If not, you can keep your own through COBRA, but that's only a year and a half. So even that's not going to run you through 65, depending how early you retire. You have sort of the health sharing ones, often religious-based. They're not true insurance. It's basically just a bunch of people with a common denominator, like Christianity, for example, that pool together medical expenses and all sort of help each other out. But there's some gotchas and restrictions in that, and I've never looked too much into it, but I've heard, some gotchas there. There's private insurance. Just call up a broker and shop around and get whatever policy. And then there's ACA, which Affordable Care Act, which is commercial insurance, but in order to be eligible to be on the Affordable Care Act, it has to have certain things like can't rule out pre-existing conditions and whatever. So it makes it more accessible and an option to people who otherwise may not even be eligible to get insurance otherwise if there wasn't ACA. Right. And it has the extra benefit of, depending on your income level, you can get some subsidies in the form of tax credits. And I'm glad you brought this up. There's a lot of noise and confusion now about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, what that means. Is it killing the ACA? No, Affordable Care Act is not going away. What's changing is, like you said, that there were always, since the inception of the Affordable Care Act, these income-based subsidies you can get. During COVID, those were juiced up. They were enhanced. They were larger, more generous. All that's happening now is we're getting rid of that extra juicing up and going back to this sort of baseline original level of subsidies, which are a reduction of subsidies, but they're not going away. Anyway, so. I think that's basically it. There's really not, the other option is just wing it and don't get coverage, or I guess catastrophic coverage, if you can get one of those that only cover really big, really serious events.
And remember, Andy, the catastrophic coverage now will qualify for you to contribute to an HSA with the One Big Beautiful Bill.
That's right, yeah.
Catastrophic and bronze plans.
Bronze. So is it all bronze or by default eligible now? They are, okay.
They use that, they actually use that language in the bill.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good one.
A neat little trick for people who have bronze plans to get an HSA. And so, okay, the second point then, this is a biggie. Like you said, a lot of people have most, or not all, but most of their investable assets tied up into pre-tax qualified plans, such as employers' 401k or 403b, their savings plan if you're a federal employee. Generally speaking, you can't access that before 59 and a half. If you do, there's a 10% penalty in addition to taxes you're going to pay anyway. There's some exceptions, but most people don't fall into those one-off exceptions like disability or whatever, first-time home purchase, what have you. So what did you do? How did you access the money where you even said most of it was in your 401k, you're not at 59 and a half? What's the strategy there, or for you at least?
Yeah, so for me, and I made some mistakes when it comes to this. We all do, so I like to be open about those as well. I didn't have smooth sailing, but the way that I planned it out was that I knew that you could, if you had a regular brokerage account, that is in no way tied to your age. So I didn't have a big enough brokerage account. So for instance, my investment club money, that was technically a brokerage account. I could get at that really easy. I had a little bit of company stock, so I knew I could get at that really easy. But other than that, my brokerage account was minimal. So that ran out, I would say, in the first 2 or 3 years, right? So my second lever was looking at my Roth contributions. Just the contributions, not the growth. Now, I had been contributing to my Roth IRA for nearly 20 years, so I had a lot of contributions. On top of that, a part of my 401k was Roth. So when I rolled it over, it showed me this much is contributions and this much is growth. So I had that. Now, so I'm doing this, Andy, I have my CFP, so I could figure some of this stuff out. I'm like, you know what? I should not be depleting my Roth IRA. So what else can I do? Now, the other account that's sitting in the background is my health savings account. So I did cash out receipts. I only had like $5,000. Like I had been on a HSA plan for 12 years. And in those 12 years, I had only accumulated $5,000 worth of expenses. And I'm very thankful that I was healthy enough that that's all I had. But I did cash it in. I found receipt, or I had, collected digitally, saved receipts from dental, vision, health, anything that qualified. Okay. So I finally cashed that in. I'm like, I don't want to hold on to these receipts anymore. And any other medical, dental, or vision expenses, I just, take out of my health savings account. So basically those things are completely tax-free and there's no penalty. Now, when I started thinking a little bit more about my Roth, I'm like, I don't want to be depleting my Roth. I should want to save that till the last because it's going to be tax-free when I take it out. So I started digging into, this was literally a couple years ago, digging into something called, it's a part of IRS code 72T, and it's called substantially equal periodic payments, SEPP. And it used to scare me before, just like, you hear people talking about things and it's this big, ugly boogeyman. And finally, when I dug into it, there had been some changes in 2021 that made it make more sense. The issue I didn't want to have to deal with was having to lock up a big chunk of my IRA just to get out a certain amount every year. So by the time I think I was 54 when I finally set this up, but it was, you use this little formula or whatever, and you have to take out the same amount every year. The option I chose, you get 3 different ways you can take it. I just chose the amortization because that was the one where I had to lock up the least amount of money in an IRA to get the most. I wanted $15,000 a year. So I did the math. There's a bunch of calculators everywhere. And plus I found this genius guy. He's a CPA that's been practicing forever. I had him on our podcast, but his website is like 72T Calc. And all he did was 72Ts and other early withdrawal things. So I reached out to him and I asked him if he would come on the podcast. So we did like a 2-part mega series. So this was at the tail end of me making my decision, but I thought it could help other people. So I wanted $15,000 a year, and using the math during the amortization method, I was able to, all I had to lock up was $240,000 of an IRA. So I split off $240,000, created a separate IRA just for this 72T, and I set up automatic payments. And so every year at the same time, I get $15,000, no penalty. Of course, it is still subject to tax. I've been able to get my taxes close to zero, not quite zero, but so that is what I'm living off of now. And anything else, maybe I would go to my Roth, maybe I would have a little bit of income, but again, not enough income to typically cover what I need in annual expenses. So right now, that is my primary way. I have one little extra thing that would apply to traditional retirees as well, Andy, is a pension.
Okay.
I'm in my 50s, so a lot of Gen Xers, they got caught in the middle of pensions being retired or frozen. So I got caught in the middle of a frozen pension, right? I was so young when I started that job that I didn't even realize the company was putting in money on my behalf. I didn't have to put anything in. But before I knew it, when I left, I think it had gotten to like $60,000 or something like that. And of course, my fine mind tells me, oh, I'm just going to roll it over to an IRA because I want control of my money, right? I want to put it in VTSAX, if you want to be stereotypical. But once I retired, I cleared the cobwebs out of my head and I said, let me look at these options again. I think one time I sent you these options and said, what do you think? So I realized that they were the monthly payout options were incredibly generous. One example is I thought, like if you use the, what's it called, joint and survivor, I thought that was always a married couple, right? Well, it doesn't have to be a spouse. It could be a child. In my case, my child. And I'm like, so not only do I get a monthly payment for the rest of my life, when I pass away, my daughter can get a monthly payment for the rest of her life. It was ridiculous. So I see why they're going away. Now, I didn't end up going with that. I just literally turned it on a week ago where I decided to do period certain for 20 years. That means once I turn it on, I'm going to get these monthly payments guaranteed for at least 20 years, even if I die. If I die, it goes to my beneficiaries. And hopefully I get the stamp of approval, Andy, and I chose the 2% annual increase so that it will keep up with inflation. So that's only $510 a month. So it's not huge, but that is just at 2% for the rest of my life. And even if I pass away within 20 years, my daughter will continue getting the payment. So as far as guaranteed money, I've got the $15,000 from the 72T, and then I've got the the 500 a month, which is about $6,000 a year from this small frozen pension. And everything else will either come from income or I could, take contributions from my Roth, which I'm hoping will be minimal.
Right, hoping to minimize that. Now, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the pension. I do remember looking at that, and I was blown away. I've never seen that before. Granted, I haven't seen every pension in existence, but the joint and survivor, I couldn't believe my eyes when it said usually it's just spouses, but your daughter, who's obviously a generation younger than you, the payment would live on for your daughter if you predeceased her.
Right.
And unless I missed something like that, that was accurate. That was amazing. So, now, did 20-year certain, did you get life and 20-year certain? You just got a fixed 20 years and it stops at 20 years if you live beyond 20 years.
Oh, no, it's so period certain. The way I interpret that, and when I read the details, I don't know if it's called something else, but in other pensions, but it says that this means that for the first 20 years after you turn this on, you're guaranteed to get this amount. Now, if I continue to live, I will get it for the rest of my life.
Okay, got it.
But obviously, people that turn on a pension, what's their biggest fear? I turn on this pension, I'm going to die tomorrow, right? And your money's all gone. Yeah, and then it stops. So the period certain is to help that. Now, obviously, they lower your monthly amount when you do that. And here's another new thing I saw, Andy. Even when I had sent this over to you, I didn't see it. It shows me the value of the pension. Like it takes, it'll take the single life annuity, right, or the single life payment, and every other option. It will tell you as a percentage of that option the value of the option, every single option. So I could see that the option I chose was like 109%. There were a couple other options like the joint and survivor that was like 115%. So you know how we try to run these numbers and everything. I was very surprised that they showed that option where it made it super easy to see the value of each option I was looking at. And the actuaries have already gotten to it. It's assuming normal life expectancy, they're all equal, right?
Yeah, right. And that's why, so when you said, like, hopefully you get my stamp of approval, the pension claiming decision, like who knows? Unless you know for certainty how long you're going to live, in your case, what inflation's going to be or not be throughout the next 20, 30, 40 years. I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but you just sort of pick what seems to make the most sense for you. If you have a significant other or someone else who's going to get benefit payments off you if you die first, that needs to get factored in. I don't know, like, we'll know in hindsight what the best payment option was for you. But I think getting an inflation thing, if your pension has it, most don't. It's good that yours even has the option. I don't think you'll regret that. The 20-year certain makes sense. Yeah, if you do, God forbid, die early, then the payments live on for the the full 20 years at least. So, and at your age, I mean, you're young, so the 20-year period certain wasn't a tremendous ding to your payment probably, versus if you were 65 starting a pension, right?
Correct.
To guarantee you get a 20 years cost more, because chances are you might die, higher chance you'll die in 20 years than you would if you start that at 50, so.
Yeah, I was going to mention, it seemed like the difference in the payout was minimal.
Yeah.
And, so I went to, well, I guess one of the other benefits specifically for someone that retired early, when I turned these payments on at 50, I was 54 when I was 55 when I officially turned them on, or I was turning 55 that year. This is another option that I have where I'm not going to get the 10% penalty by turning on the payments.
Right. Great point. Yeah. So like the pension, and here's sort of conceptually why, just like you were able to tap your IRA before 59 and a half without penalty because you did so under substantially equal periodic payments. Right. Pension is just that. A pension is by definition a substantially equal periodic payment. So that waives the penalty if you started early. Same thing with annuities. If you were to have bought an annuity and started at 50, 55, that's technically like a pre-tax sort of qualified pot of money. But by annuitizing, you're turning it into a substantially equal periodic payment, hence avoids the 10% penalty.
Yeah, so good point. There's a ton. I think if you go to section 72T of the IRS code, it lists 20 or 25 different ways that you can take money out of your retirement account early without the 10% early withdrawal penalty.
Yep. And most of them are sort of one-off things that, like again, disability or first-time home or higher education or something.
Right. But limited amount, in some cases, limited amounts.
Yeah, exactly. The big one that's going to unlock it for most people for a longer amount of time is this substantially equal periodic payment thing. So now I'm curious, the 72T, there's three options, like you said, you did a calculator. That does scare a lot of people. Now, did you go at it completely yourself and then happen to find a CPA who knew about it? Or did you engage someone to help you think through this and make sure you weren't, messing something up or whatever?
Well, I had done it myself, but as you know, I'm a consumer of podcasts and YouTube, and there's a lot of brilliant people like Andy Panko that have talked about, I see you turning pink. So there's a lot of good information from people that I trust. Okay. Sean Mulaney is one of those people. Cody Garrett is one of those people. You're one of those people. So I had enough resources. On top of that, I always plan for the worst case scenario. So I put together what I called an in case I get audited kit. Okay. So I used 3 different calculators. It took me 5 minutes to do each, but I just wanted to make sure they were all consistent. Sean Mulaney even had one that's in Google Sheets. Okay. Did all the math, put in all the, and there's only like 3 or 4 data points you got to put in to come up with what that number is. And I was able to quickly know that the amortization method was the one that allows you to get the highest monthly payment for locking up the least amount of money in your IRA. So I put that together. I had a big question about how do I come up with my starting amount, right? Like what I'm starting with and what I base all of this off of. And that's when I went looking all over the internet. Nobody could really give me a good answer. I hit this guy's website. His name is Bill Stecker, but he had this free ebook and it answered the exact question I was looking for. The IRS, as you know, is very vague about certain things. They go, you can use so I created I broke off a piece of my IRA and started this new IRA for this $240,000. And I said, well, so the IRS says to come up with a valuation, the amount you're starting with, you can use December 31st of the prior year. Well, I didn't have the account then. So now what do I use? And then they'll say, or anything that's reasonable. I'm like, what does that mean?
Thanks. Right. Yeah.
Right. So it just gave me, it gave me leeway, and you know, the CPA confirmed it, and I kept looking for anything specific. If I can't find anything specific, then typically I interpret that as, you know, the IRS saying, we're not saying anything specific, but fall within these parameters. So reasonable is reasonable. So I put together, I just took my most recent statement. I put this in the kit, in case I get audited kit, which is just online in a folder. So I had the 3 calculators that I use. I got a copy of the statement with the balance in which I started with, and I showed a copy of where I set up the annual payments to come out the same time every year. So would I ever get audited? I don't know. They can audit you for anything. It's like, if I get audited, that's fine. Come on, let me show you what I did. If I made a mistake or I did something wrong, tell me what I did wrong, and I'll make up for it. But that's the worst case scenario. Okay, I follow the rules. Right. The rules aren't that hard the rules aren't near as hard as some even professionals make it out to be. I'm talking CPAs, CFPs, all these financial professionals. In most cases, they've just never done one. Most of them work with traditional age retirees, and they've done very few 72Ts. But this guy, Bill Stecker, that I found, he does them in his sleep. So he was the expert. And by the time I found him, I was done with mine. I felt confident. I put together an in case I get audited kit, and I felt comfortable with it. Now, many people probably wouldn't, and maybe they could use somebody like Bill Stecker, or there's very few CPAs or CFPs that actually do these, but I'm sure they could find someone if they wanted help or even just a second look at it. I did get a second look, but you know, it wasn't any professional relationship or anything.
Yeah, that's great. And you said Bill's site is 72tcalc.com?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
That's awesome.
He's a great guy. I think he's been CPA practicing for like 35 years. So he's an older guy, but man, does he know his stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And just one final comment on these 72Ts, in case people are interested or don't already know. You have to have these payments run for the greater of 5 years or until you turn 59 and a half. So you can't decide like 2 years in, no, I'm good, I don't want this anymore. If you break from the plan, then the IRS retroactively charges you the 10% penalty on all the money you took out up until that point. So there's some, I don't say restriction, but
that's exactly right.
some requirements to these, right? 5 years or 59 and a half, but
yeah, and in my opinion, there's probably a sweet spot to do these. Like, I don't know if I would be trying to do this at 35 or even 45. Right.
It's lock and change, and
it's such a long runway. So I think the sweet spot is maybe late 40s up until about 55, 56. Because once you turn 56, it's like you only got 3 more years. Is there anything you can do? You know, even if you took the 10% penalty for a little bit of it, if you needed it, it would probably not make sense to lock yourself in to 5 years. Exactly. So there's definitely a unique situation where these would work great, but I do believe many financial professionals probably push away from the table a little too quickly because they're not that familiar with them. So I'm just saying it's worth giving it another look. There were some changes in 2021 that I think made the floor 5% in the interest rate, like to 5%. But anyway, when I looked at it before, I had to lock up a lot more money than I did after 2021, and it made it look a lot more attractive to me. So they're not that difficult. There's tons of calculators now to make it easy. There's that ebook that I mentioned. So if anything, I just like to share that I set one up for myself. I felt comfortable doing it, and it's not as hard as I thought it was prior to me doing my own research.
That's good to know. Thanks for sharing. I'm one of those people. I've never done one firsthand. I know the rules. I know how they work. Maybe I inherently subconsciously shy away because I've never done one, but it's good to know that you just put your mind to it, think through it, cross your T's, dot your I's. Like, they're not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
Okay. few more little technical things about your financial life before I want to be sure we touch on your sort of what you're doing now in the podcast and stuff. But so you mentioned you have a house, you do not pay off the mortgage. What rate do you have? Is it a, sub 3% rate that you're keeping it, or is there other reasons why you're deciding to not pay it off?
Yeah, so here was one of the mistakes I made. So when I was talking about the penalty-free money, so my intention was to sell my house. And so when my daughter graduated from high school in 2013, I told her at that time, I said, hey, as soon as you graduate from high school, I'm out of here. So let's see, 10, 15 years later, I still have the house. So that was going to be this large pot of tax-free money, but I didn't move. So that's what sort of put me in a little bit of a squeeze to look at. I mean, I had a lot of different levers, but honestly, the easy one would have been if I had $300,000 from the sale of my home, because I don't plan on buying again. That was something I came to, that was a decision I made about 2 years ago, that when I sell this house, I do not want to purchase another home. It's just a lot of the extra maintenance and all that. I guess I'm just at a different phase in my life, and I just really want to rent a really nice place and a nice neighborhood and all of that. So for me with the house, so this is going to sound crazy, and I never really talked about this before. Now, I've had my mortgage for a very long time. So since before my divorce. Okay. And this is when I wasn't even interested in money at all. Okay. It is a variable rate. Okay.
Ooh. Okay.
I know. Yes, do tell. So 2.75% was what it started out as. And this would have been, I don't know, 2001, 2002, something like that. But it was 2.75% for like 5 years. Okay. Now, when I got divorced, I had no idea how this stupid thing worked. But I did my research, and I saw that it could only go up or down by 2% each year. Okay. And it was based on the 1 year constant treasury, blah, blah, blah. So this helped me understand, because when my rate was changing every year, I didn't know what it was based on. But as you know, up until like 2020, interest rates were super low. So most of the time I've had this mortgage, it's been 2.75, might have gone up to 3.75, maybe 4.75. 1 year, it might have got up to even like 6.75. Okay. So, but for the majority of the time, it was really low. Now, because I knew I was going to sell the house, I just knew I was going to sell this house. I'm like, why bother refinancing? Right. So 15 years later, I still have the home. I still have this variable interest rate. This year, it's not looking so great. It changes, I think, each June. But I've never done anything with it. It was a variable rate before variable rates got crazy. So around 2008, they got very ridiculous. There's no balloon payment. There's no crazy amount. Like I said, the most it could go up is 2% each year. And I think the cap that it could never go above 9%. Now, hopefully that wouldn't be the case. Right. Now, obviously, if rates had gotten really, really high, maybe it would have gone up that high. It never did. So right now, I think it might be around like 4 or 5%. So reasonable. Yeah. But again, the mistake I made is that even though I just knew I was going to sell this house, I should have taken advantage of the super low rate, because then I would have a fixed rate at like 2.75. And I should have done this before I retired, because now I'm retired and I really don't show much of an income. Now there's ways around that, but not easily. Yeah. So that's the variable. Again, I got the variable before variables got crazy. So it's not a part of this balloon interest rates going up. No, that's not even possible. But if I had to do it over, I would have just locked in a low rate, even if I thought I was moving, but I kept saying, why do I want to pay the refinance fees when I'm going to sell it next year or whatever? Yeah. So it just goes to show that even the best laid plans change.
Oh, of course, definitely. Now, when it is paid off, or you do eventually sell and rent, do you plan on staying in Ohio somewhere?
No, all of my family and where I grew up is in South Carolina and Georgia. So I will go back down south. So I will not stay in Ohio.
Okay. And
so
your daughter, she's New York currently, right? What's her intentions or plan? Do you know?
Yeah, well, before she got pregnant, she was planning on moving to Arizona where her dad lives. And I always encourage that because really where we live in Dayton, Ohio, there's much better economic cities to be in for a young person. And so I definitely encourage her to do that. So for me, I'm glad that we are so close. You know, we go to dinner every single week, which is something I splurge on because it's so easy for time to go by. And before I know it, you know, a month has gone by and we haven't had dinner or gotten together. So every single week we get together for dinner. We'll getting together for dinner tonight if she doesn't deliver. So yeah, she probably will move. So I think that's what probably has kept me in Ohio longer than I intended. Maybe again, this phase of my life, I'm really appreciating being this close to my daughter. Yeah. And I totally realized that, you know, it's possible that we can never live this close together ever. So I want to take advantage of the time that we are. Now I get to enjoy my grandbaby and things like that. Now, whenever she moves away, that'll probably be my big trigger to say, okay, my daughter's not in Ohio anymore. I'm ready to get rid of this house. But for now, you know, here's where I am. And again, I've decided that I don't want to buy again. I mean, even though I don't, you know, I hire out, you know, landscaping and lawn and things like that because I just don't like to do that stuff. I still have to pay for it. So when it comes to housing costs, I have to include lawn, landscaping, you know, all the grimy stuff. Like you got to get your gutters cleaned. You got to get your siding and your painting trim, you know, the trim of your house, all that stuff. I just don't even want to mess with it. In 2020, I had to get a new HVAC system. I barely knew what HVAC stood for. I had to get a new, so there will always be something, okay? There will always be something. I'm like, you know what? I want to break from that. I want to travel a whole lot more internationally. And the last thing I want to think about is stuff with my house. So
I'm coming around to that. I was always firmly in the camp. My wife and I bought our first house in 2004. We were only mid-20s at the time. We closed a few months before we got married, actually. But so I was firmly like, I want the house, I want the yard, I love the maintenance, I like handy stuff and building. So I've always enjoyed it. The last few years, I don't know what happened, but I'm just losing interest in that. Yeah. I used to love cutting the grass and take a lot of pride in trimming the bush. Like now, it's I don't want to do it. Cleaning the gutters, I do. We have a deck that when we bought the house in 2007 seemed to be pretty new at the time. Now some boards are rotting and stuff and it has to get replaced. $20,000 for this. It's not even a large deck. Yeah. Like stuff always comes up and always happens. So I 100% see the merit in, you know what, renting's okay. Even if you do that the rest of your life in retirement, right? Yeah.
And I also thought about, Andy, it doesn't have to be a permanent decision. If a year in, I decide I don't like renting, I can change it. But you're so right. I used to love being a homeowner. Like I think once I even changed light fixtures, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I would never want to do that now. I'm like, why do I want to sit here mowing my lawn or changing light fixtures when I could be in Bali getting a massage twice a week? So,
right. So how was Bali? Speaking of that, you just got back last week, right? Like a little sidetrack, but I've never been, but I've heard great things.
Yeah, Bali was a dream. It's in Indonesia. I was there for a month, and I am so glad that I had, again, being retired, I had the opportunity to do that. I was kind of working. There's a retreat called Freedom Retreat. Amy Minkley runs it. She retired early herself, but she was an international school teacher, and she's been all over the world, and she fell in love with Bali and has been there for 12 years. So once she retired, she wanted to do this retreat and bring other 5 people to Bali. So I spoke, she had 2 retreats, one at the beginning of September, one at the end. I came and I was really more like a facilitator. It was a lot more deeper thinking and work than just the numbers and the math. It was, in a lot of ways, it was life-changing for myself and other people there. But being there a month was so different than when I went on a week vacation when I was working. Right. Like I really got to appreciate the culture, the people, seeing things beyond the touristy things. And then there's some luxuries in some of these other countries because the cost of living is so low. There's some luxuries we could never afford to enjoy, most people in the US. Things like I could get a driver for the day that took me everywhere I needed to go. It was $42, I think. All day he took me wherever I wanted to go. Yeah,
that's an Uber to the airport a half hour away from me, like $42.
Exactly. If I want to go one way to the airport, it's $45 for me. So I would never be able to do that. And then right before I left the U.S., I had some dental work to be done, which included a crown. So I got the quote for the crown. It was $1,500. Okay. So I wanted to get a second opinion. So Amy, who has been living there for 12 years, she's got a dentist that she's used for a long time, very happy with them. So she gave me her dentist, went to the dentist, got a quote using better material. I guess in normal material is like porcelain. They have something called zirconia, which is better quality. It lasts longer. And so I got a quote for the zirconia crown that was $305 versus $1,500. So I got that done. I had to go there, they prepare the tooth or whatever, and then you have to come back a week later. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to be leaving in, a week. They said, what day are you leaving? I told them the day I was leaving. And they're like, oh, no problem. We can get you in. I'm like, okay, that's good. Because our dentist, when we tell them we need to make another appointment, they want to look 3 months ahead. Right. Yeah. So it was amazing. And I also got an eye exam while I was there. That was dirt cheap. And so again, only being there a month, that I have time to do these extra things. And here's the kicker, Andy. Even though I was abroad having these medical and vision services done, the HSA rules say that I can use my HSA to cover these expenses. So not only were they cheaper, but they were tax-free. And I'm like, life is great.
Multiple win, yeah. My barber, he needed a lot of dental work last year. And he ended up going to Turkey, medical tourism to Turkey. He did, I think it was 2 trips, maybe 3. And even with the hotel, it is like arranged through some service where it's, what's the capital? Whatever. It's like the main city in Turkey, Ankara, something like that. Some service set it up where they got him a nice hotel right downtown. The dentist was a few blocks away. All of that, the hotel, the flights, all the dental work. He had like multiple crowns and bridges, and I think he got some veneers or something. He said it was thousands of dollars cheaper than it would have been to have it done here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if something goes wrong, you go to a U.S. dentist, like they're not going to touch it, right? Probably, but still, the guy was an experienced dentist. I think he trained it may have even been in the U.S. or somewhere in Europe. So it's not like some back alley. Yeah, exactly. But.
Well, I think that's the biggest fear, and that was my biggest fear, is how do you find a good professional, a good facility? And because, Mott was referred to me by, Amy, who lived there for a long time, you do a little bit of research. You don't want to go, like you said, into some back alley place. You want to go to a very nice place that has good reviews and they are actually board certified or whatever the equivalent is for that country. And you can certainly do that and just turn a vacation. I mean, now when I travel, I definitely want to do the longer travel and think about, is there any medical, dental, or vision services that I need? It makes more sense, again, non-emergency, of course, that anything that I need done. And make sure it's just a reputable place where I do some research and, just get it done. But that was kind of the surprise. I didn't go there for the purposes of my teeth. Okay. But, I wasn't going to be able to get that done until I got back. And I'm like, wait a minute, I brought the x-rays with me and everything, and they did their own x-rays. But it was kind of cool that I took advantage of that, because I was close to saying, I'm on my vacation, I don't really want to do it. And I'm like, why not? So I did it. I was pleasantly surprised and better for it.
Great. 2 more quick things that we'll sort of wrap after that. But Social Security, speaking from a FIer who's single, I don't know what your plans are down the road with potential relationships, but what's your decision about Social Security now? Granted, it's well over a decade away. Do you think of taking it early because of FI reasons and wanting the income sooner? Do you plan on taking it later, somewhere in between? What's your thought process?
Yeah, the Social Security is a good question. So when again, this is where I was in your Facebook group and all over social media, hearing people say Social Security is not going to be there, the trust fund is going away, and all this misinformation. So originally in my 5 plans before I retired, I did not include Social Security at all. So for me and most FIRE people, they don't include it. Now, I'm more realistic about it. It's not going to go away. If you want to be super conservative, then slash it by 20% because that's what I know how excited you get about the Social Security trust fund.
Oh yeah, love it.
But that's an important thing to understand, that it's basically like an emergency fund. It's not the program itself that's is not going to be able to pay out benefits. So if you want to be super conservative, take your age 62 and slash it by 20%. That's the advice I give people to hopefully keep them from discounting it and not counting it at all. So the way I see it, it is a powerful backstop in the 4th quarter of my life. So for me, I was married. I don't know if you caught this, but I was married for 12 years. So that means that I could qualify for ex-spouse benefits or survivor benefits. So for me, I will take it at 62, which is not what most financial professionals suggest. However, if I don't think I'll go back to work, but let's say I had a pretty beefy income, I would not turn it on at 62 because, part of your benefits gets withheld. Now, I know they pay you back once you turn 67, but, I don't trust people. So I would rather that not happen. So assuming that my income is modest like it is today, I would go ahead and take it at 62. My age, my Social Security itself is more than half of my ex-spouse, so I would not be getting anything. However, if he were deceased or if he predeceases me, then I can switch to the survivor benefits, which is 100% of his benefit. Yeah. So that's an additional option I have that a lot of people may not have. So literally, it's only 50% if he's living, 100% if he's dead. So literally, he's worth more to me dead than alive. Sorry.
Don't tell him that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up about being married 10 years. For anyone listening, not to get too off on a tangent, but if you're married and your relationship isn't going well and divorce seems to be on the horizon and you're close to 10 years of marriage, just legally stick it out 10 years. Like to the day, it needs to be 10 years, your marriage. Mm-hmm. If you get divorced 9 years and 360 days after you got married, you do not qualify for these spousal or ex-spousal benefits Jackie just mentioned. Hold the divorce, sit on the divorce papers for a week if that's the case. Get yourself to 10 years if possible. Now, if you're married 2 years, you're getting divorced, you're not sticking around 8 more years just for this. But if you're close to 10 years, try to stick out 10 years of marriage if possible. Even on paper. You don't have to live together, but on paper, be married for 10 years.
Andy, I guess another point to bring up is I didn't know this at the time that I got divorced, so I had no idea, and most people don't. Yeah. So a lot of late starters, that is something. What are you in New Jersey?
I have my window open. It's hot in my office, and there's if you can hear this, there's a loud siren just went by. So apologies.
Yeah, well, hey, you're a city boy. You're in New Jersey, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people don't know this. So a lot of late starters, some of them are getting started late because of a divorce. And many times that divorce lasted more than 10 years, and they don't know about this provision because a lot of times maybe it's gender neutral, but a lot of times one spouse was a stay-home spouse, right? They wasn't earning Social Security or not to the degree of the working spouse. Or there's other situations where they think they have nothing for retirement, and I remind them of this provision that this is why it was put in place, that, if they don't have a lot accumulated for Social Security, they may qualify for ex-spouse benefits, because you got what they call a gray divorce and things like that, where they've been married, raised the kids and everything. 20 years later, they get a divorce. And I just always try to remind people, typically it is women, that there are some benefits, Social Security benefits, that they may have earned even if they were not the working spouse.
Right, something to look into, definitely.
Yeah.
Final technical question around investments. So you mentioned VTSAX. This is not investment advice. We're not saying you should or shouldn't buy that, but that's Vanguard's total U.S. stock market mutual fund. How would you classify at a high level your investment approach? What type of stuff are you using, investing in, without naming specifics? But
Right. Nothing fancy, nothing that would not be widely available for everyone. Okay. So VTSAX, I just mentioned that because that's like the fire VTSAX and chill.
yeah.
What that represents is a super simplistic index fund, Vanguard, Jack Bogle type of investing. That's all that is, right? Except they put a ticker symbol to it. For me, I did research as I approached retirement. I wanted to look at some different index funds because I wanted one stock go-to index fund instead of choosing this fund and that fund. And now that I didn't work anymore, I should have access to, any publicly available fund. So I lean towards growth. So I use a growth fund primarily for my stocks. And for some people, they feel like it's a little too risky. That's okay. For me, it matches what I want. So still about 80% of my asset allocation is this growth stock index fund. Now, in addition to that, I have the pension, which I consider part of my fixed income. When it comes to fixed income, I'm not a fan of bonds, but there's a bunch of other ways that you can get fixed income, CDs, treasuries, and things like that. I prefer something like that because obviously I need some money in cash to be able to live off of, right?
Right.
The other part is I mentioned an investment club, like when I first started waking up about my money. I enjoy doing stock analysis. I'm a long-term investor, so no day trading or options or anything fancy like that. I enjoy being the owner of great companies. Like I've gone to annual meetings, I listen to quarterly earnings calls, I vote my proxy. I love that. But as you know, Andy, the vast majority of people, they don't want to be bothered with it, and that's okay. But I do have an individual stock portfolio that probably at this point represents about 10% of my investable assets. So about 80% in the index fund, 10% stocks, the rest is cash. And this will vary slightly, depending on what I need to live off of, or if I want to put a little bit more in cash. But yeah, super simple. Everything that I mentioned, easily accessible to everybody. They don't need to join a WhatsApp group or anything special like that. It's available to everyone. And I do know that there's, I prefer the low cost options. The way that I started growing my assets was through my 401k. I'm a little frustrated with the 401k industry because the average person these days, a 401k or similar employer-sponsored retirement plan, that is the primary resource or savings vehicle for their retirement now. And the vast majority of people don't understand it. They have no idea like how to pick investments, when they should expect to retire, how much they should save, and things like that. So some people very close to me, I've helped them out, and I just get frustrated all over again. So I'm trying to put something together to try to make it super easy for most people, but I've been very disappointed with that, and I just think we could do better.
Definitely. And perfect segue into present day, in retirement, what you're doing. So just to recap, you have a master's in financial planning, financial therapy. What was the technical?
That's correct. That's all correct.
Okay. You've since obtained the CFP, which is Certified Financial Professional designation. You are accredited financial counselor. That's AFC,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But you are not practicing advisor, but you do sort of one-to-many coaching. And maybe this ties into like what you just said about the 401k, which I agree is can do much better for the people it serves. So what are you doing with yourself and sort of some coaching, mentoring, educating, in the space?
Yeah, well, a big part of my vision is financial education. Like if I had to put it in one sentence, I just wanted to help create a financially literate society. And in order to do that, I don't think one-on-one planning or educating or even coaching is enough, or it doesn't touch enough people. So my goal was always thinking about how can I touch more people, specifically people that are not likely to get this message or not likely to have the resources to hire a financial planner or even a financial coach. What about those people? And a lot of it probably comes from my background. I grew up very, very poor. If I had more financial education, I think it would have clicked for me even at a young age, but I wasn't exposed to that. I didn't have this information. And, a lot of people will say, well, this information is out there available to the public for anybody. Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And if you've never been exposed to it, you don't even know the right questions to ask. I know I didn't. Right. So because I think that extra passion for people that, might have grew up in poverty or grew up in circumstances where they had no one around them to help them with understanding some of this financial stuff, I wanted to be that person. And I knew that I had to do it in a way that touched a lot of people at once. So originally, or initially, the way that I did this is I did like financial education workshops. I would go into high schools and talk about basics like, talking about credit, talking about debt, talking about saving and compound growth and things like that. And I had actually, before my daughter graduated from high school, I wrote a book called Money Letters to My Daughter, because I'm learning all these basic things. And as parents, Andy, when we learn something, the first thing we want to do is teach it to our kids. So I put it all in a book because she was 14 at this time and she wasn't listening to anything that I was saying.
Of course not.
So no, of course not. So I wrote this. It's just a self-published book. It would forever be my greatest work. But I put that book together, got it published, and I wanted to give it to her as her high school graduation gift. So that was the initial part of trying to educate others. So when I wrote that book, somehow, people think that you're an expert, and I got invited to come into her high school and a bunch of other high schools. I went to all the high schools in the district that I grew up in, which were Title I schools, and Title I schools are where a large percentage of these students are on some type of public assistance, right? Or the free lunch program. I was on the free lunch program. So I love doing this, and I did everything I could to make it fun, to make it easy. That's when I started giving away $2 bills. The $2 bill thing was the way that I first learned how to save from the time that I was a kid. And so I made it fun. I would play. I didn't go in there to talk or to lecture per se. I went in there to play games. I went in there to teach them how to be rich, so I learned the better terminology that would actually get kids excited. So from then on, it just grew to adults, because what I have learned after working with adults and working with high school kids, their financial knowledge is about the same. And honestly, a big part of the difference is that a lot of times the kids are more willing to look things up and to learn. So I started doing this for different companies because I'm a corporate girl, and I think, it's just been, word of mouth. Like an HR person that I used to work with, they go to another company, they're like, hey, I know somebody who can do financial wellness. So that was mainly who I was working with. Now, once I got done, got my master's degree and everything. I didn't know how I was going to use it, but I just enjoyed the process, Andy. So I enjoyed, this is the first time in my life that I had ever gone to college and didn't have to work. When I was an undergrad, I had to work full time plus, like 2 jobs to pay my own way through college. So finally, I didn't have to do that. I enjoyed these classes. And somehow I ended up going through the financial planning process, doing the exam, which is a really, really hard exam. I was very scared of that exam, Andy. You helped me get through it because I had to find other CFPs that were producing content that was CFP level content to help me pass the exam, because the program that I decided to use, the one that I chose, that was a bad decision on my part because it wasn't what I expected, and I was a little disappointed, but I didn't have time to complain about that. I still found ways to pass the exam. So for me and probably anyone else, it's the worst return on investment ever because I'm not making the big bucks. Most people get the CFP to make the big bucks, $200,000 a year, whatever. I didn't want to use it that way. I had the luxury of using it to touch more people and to not just limit myself to doing one-on-one. And I, to this day, don't have an avenue where I offer one-on-one coaching or counseling. Typically, if I'm doing it, friend, family, or somebody like that. But, writing the book, I'm hitting millions of people, even with my podcast, I'm hitting millions of people that might not otherwise get good information from a CFP professional or an AFC professional. Like, I don't know if you think this way, but I feel like there's a lot of CFPs and other financial professionals that complain that there's a lot of bad financial information on social media and online. Okay, so if you think that, then won't you get online and share the good information? So that's what I'm trying to do. Now you do that, Andy, right? You got the Facebook group, you got a YouTube, you've got podcasts. You are getting out very good, high quality information. I refer people to your content all the time, and you helped me pass the CFP exam. So you are doing that. You're just, I don't know how you do it, but you're doing that in addition to your one-on-one firm, the business that you run as a CFP professional, where you do work one-on-one and you have a big book of clients. So yeah, that's how I'm using mine. And that's what gives me joy. And again, only being retired from my corporate job have I been able to find room to do it the way that I'm doing.
Yeah, which is great. And so you wrote the book, Lessons for Your Daughter, Money Lessons for Your Daughter. I see, for those of you watching, behind you got the Fire for Dummies. How'd you get involved in that? And that came out last year, right? 2024, I think?
Yeah, it came out April 2024, so it's been about a year and a half. So yeah, it was kind of interesting how it came about. So a fellow CFP, I don't know if you know her, but her name is Sarah Catherine Gutierrez. Lady Splaining was like her moniker online. But anyway, she is a good friend of mine, and she had been, I don't know how she connected with Wiley. Wiley is the parent company and that owns the For Dummies brand. So she was starting to write this book, or she had agreed to write this book for called Wealth Building for Dummies. Okay. Now she was thinking on it. So she hadn't started the process yet. She was given a proposal and things like that. But she was building a firm, just like you were. She was building a firm. She was very busy and she just did not have the bandwidth. So when she kind of turned it down and said, look, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. I'm working on building my firm and things like that. They said, do you know of anyone else? So she said, oh, I think I know someone. And so she called me up and asked me if I would be interested. I'm like, of course. So all she did was connect us. So I talked to the acquisitions executive at Wiley, that was over the For Dummies brand, and we were on a Zoom call just like this for about an hour. She's learning a little bit more about me. I'm learning a little bit more about her, and she sent this whole 4 pages of things that I needed to fill in, like my social media, my credentials, all kinds of stuff. And I later learned that this is what typically a book proposal is. But I filled all that out. I got it to them. Obviously, it had a lot to do about FIRE, financial independence, and things like that, right? So she comes back to me and she says, I pitched this to the team and they loved it. And she says, they would like to change the name of the book from Wealth Building for Dummies to Fire for Dummies. Would you be okay with that? I'm like, of course. I said, I'm glad that they made the connection because a big part of FIRE is wealth building. You just speed up the process, right? So, and I'm sure that they have all kinds of resources where they can do all these tests to see which title would do better. And obviously FIRE is a lot more exciting than wealth building, right?
Yes,
so that's how that came about. And we started the process. Now there were moments where it did feel like work. I have to say, I love writing, and I was glad to be the one to write this book and glad that I got it to the finish line. But man, I had agreed to a timeline And I don't blame Wiley. It's my fault because the timeline looked great. I'm retired, right? But there were moments where my creative juices were not flowing.
Yeah.
And so I got it all done, but there were times where I probably did feel a little more pressure than I wanted to be able to stick with the deadline. I think I extended it once, and I felt kind of bad because, you know, it's a big traditional publisher, so there's a lot of people in the lineup. So if you mess up the line, then everything else gets delayed, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it came about, and I'm super proud of the book, and you know, glad that I was the one to write it. And I thought I had all the stuff in my head, and it's a whole nother ball game to get it out of your head in writing and make it make sense to other people.
Right, cohesive and coherent and logical. Yeah. That's my concern about a book. Like I like the idea of writing a book, and I know I have the content to do one well about whatever the topic may be. I'm finance related, obviously, but I know what it takes. I think I know what it takes to do it well. I see a lot of people make books, and it's just sort of like a glorified pamphlet. Not to knock them. I mean, they did a lot more than I'm doing, but. If I want to do a book, I want to really do a book, and I'm just afraid of the commitment. Anyway. And so now you're also co-host, as you mentioned, of the Catching Up to FI podcast, which has been around a while. You took over, you stepped into co-hosting duties, replaced co-hosting duties not too long ago. Is that right?
Yeah, well, you say a while. It hasn't been around quite as long as you have. You know, you got going in 2020. This podcast, I think, started in 2023. So the first year, the co-host was Becky Heptig.
Yeah.
And after a year, she is off playing grandma. She's doing all the wonderful things she wants to do. And so Bill, who is founder of, you know, the Catching Up to 5 podcast, he's an ER physician, and he wanted to continue with the podcast. Originally, they only wanted to do 10 episodes. And 100 episodes later, Becky's like, you know, so, but Bill wanted to continue. So we were already pretty good friends. I had met him years ago at the economy conference in Cincinnati, and we were friends ever since then. And so he asked me, I had guest co-hosted, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing it. Now, incidentally, this was happening right around the time my book was getting finished. I'm like, well, when do you want me to start? And when he told me it was after the date that my book was launching, so I was fine with it. But if it was in the middle of when I was writing the book, I don't know if I would have been able to say yes at that time. So I've been doing it for almost the same amount of time that the book has been out. About a year and a half. Yeah. And so the podcast, that means the podcast was around for 2.5 years. So I love doing that podcast. Again, it's another outlet. It's another one-to-many outlet that we get to touch a lot of people versus just one. We bring on guests. We've had you, which I'd love to have you back again because I have a different take on how I would set up the interview. But we're able to touch a lot of people, and the podcast grew like crazy. I don't know if it grew as fast as your the Facebook group and the videos that you were doing, but we knew that there was a lot of late starters. Forget the 5 part, but a lot of people just learning about money a little bit later on in life. They didn't have it all figured out when they graduated college at 24, right? So I felt this way. I was a late starter. Bill was a late starter. He didn't wake up until he was 50. Becky was a late starter. And so when the podcast came out, I would say, and I was a super fan even before I co-hosted it because I knew there's a lot of people in this bucket. I talked to a lot of people, and I wanted to see that podcast be very successful. And not only did they get the support of a general audience that were also late starters and that's saying, wow, this is me, there was other podcasters and content creators that would get asked the very same question. What do I do if I'm starting late? And they started referring them to Catching Up to 5. And both Bill, me, and Becky, we'd been a part of the FI/FIRE community for a long time. So we knew all of these people. We'd listened to all the podcasts. We've even been on a lot of the podcasts. So it grew very, very fast and just hit, 1 million downloads 6 months ago, and it's still growing even at a faster pace. Have had a lot of great guests, all the biggies like, Jill Collins, just so many others that are just fixtures in the financial planning community, the financial education space, and in the financial you're talking about drawdown strategies and some unique things that specifically address when you're getting a late start. And then we have real life stories of, late starters or just, real life case studies that people just love. I personally love money stories. So I love case studies, and so this series that you started, I think it's invaluable to be able to share with people some real life situations. All of them are different, right? I mean, we're all retired, but we all have a different approach, a different age, different philosophies, different habits, things like that. So that's what I'm loving doing, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon.
Fantastic. So anything else I'm missing about you before we wrap up here? So we did the books, we did the podcast, we did the sort of educating coaching, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Did I cover it?
I think you covered it great. Just that I'm a student of the personal finance world, including, the content that you create. So I just love the idea of people because I would describe podcasts as the free classroom on any topic that you want. You can listen to the podcast or YouTube, however you prefer to learn. There's free resources out there. You find great creators, professionals or people that are just good at what they do and they know what they're talking about. It made all the difference for me. And I feel a sense of duty, honestly, to give back, to, in particular, help out the people that came from, circumstances like I did, to break things down. Like, I feel like some industry people, they want to use the 10-letter words and they want to make things sound so complex, like the 72T, substantially equal periodic payment. It's like, let's break it down. I like to start, and thus the book Fire for Dummies. Yeah. I love putting that together. I started the most basic common denominator, and I can move you up pretty fast. Like, we talk about plenty of advanced things on my podcast, but I have to get on the Bill all the time and say, Bill, you can't throw out that new term. You got to like, what is a MIGA? People don't know what a MIGA is. I'm fine with you talking about a MIGA, but let's define what it is and make it in plain English. Yeah. Yes, plain English, please. So, so if I had to have any name or titles attached to what I do, I would like it to be, educator that can cover the basics and take you all the way up to more advanced topics. And I think that's so important to get more people engaged. And there's a certain percentage of those people that do need to work with a one-on-one financial planner, but not all of them. Should we ignore everyone else and not give them something? We can certainly do better. And, when I was making the decision of getting my CFP and becoming a part of the financial planning world, I didn't have the most positive opinion, and you have shared your thoughts. You started out as an insurance person. You didn't have the most positive thoughts or expectations of what it was to be a financial planner.
I still don't.
Yeah, and you're right. So we agree with that. We're part of the industry. We have our CFPs. We are part of the financial planning world. So the choice I had, because originally when I was taking those 6 classes at Kansas State, getting my master's degree, I wasn't planning on using those 6 classes to sit for the exam or become a CFP, because I didn't think my experience would count. But, turns out financial education does count. Yeah. So I had the decision of I could either stay on the outside and continue to criticize, or I could be a part of the industry and be a part of the change as an insider. And so I chose the latter, to be a part of that change. There's a lot of great financial planners. There's a lot of great CFP professionals. I just want to see more. And I think the industry as a whole can do a lot more and do a lot better, and for the greater good, and touching more people, because we hold a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, and you're a perfect example. 10 years ago, you were working in the corporate world, still in your learning process about all this stuff. Not to say you were nobody, far from it, but you weren't a name in the industry, you know, et cetera. Now, 10 years later, on your fire journey, you are 100% a fixture, a knowledgeable, respected voice and fixture in the community, in the industry. So just to go to show everyone out there, whatever your version of retirement looks like, whatever you choose to do, you can have a really meaningful, fulfilling impact for yourself, for the people around you, and for the masses. Who knows, like you said, how many millions of people between the podcast, the books, et cetera. So nobody should ever underestimate themselves and what they have the ability to do, especially now with the world and technology and social media and all this stuff. You can have such an impactful reach, wide-ranging reach. So go for it. All right. This was awesome. Thank you, Jackie. I knew the basics of you, but now know substantially more, and I'm glad I do. So I greatly, greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. It is definitely an inspiration and a great learning piece for everyone listening. So thank you.
Yeah, totally a pleasure, Andy. Again, your work has had a huge impact on me, so keep doing what you're doing. And it was just great hanging out with you today.
Likewise. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And be sure to check out the links to the books, the podcast, and all that is Jackie. So awesome. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. Our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them, and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofi.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services, because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to Fi. Cheers.